One of the primary uses for the scenario analysis screen has always been Roth conversions, figuring out the right amount to do when we're pursuing some Roth conversion strategy. And a lot of people have asked us for a way within Holistiplan to demonstrate not just the cost of a Roth conversion, but the benefit of a Roth conversion. Because we do a real good job in scenario analysis of saying the Roth conversion is going to cost X amount, but that doesn't really always tell a compelling story for the client. And now there are other software packages that do a really good job of creating those types of projections. And so by all means, use those, but I think a lot of people have asked for just a quick and dirty way to do that within Holistiplan without having to transfer data from our system into another. So we've built something, we call it a Roth conversion explainer, a Roth one-pager. We need a better name for it. But that's rolling out today. Let's see, real quick. I'm going to do a whole other video, long video, about the methodology behind what's in the guts of this Roth conversion, because there's a whole calculation engine behind it. So we'll do that separately. But it does things like calculate RMDs. It does things like handle when one spouse dies, what happens to Social Security on the other one within some reason. There's some edge cases it doesn't do, but inflation, and of course we have a tax engine, so it handles the tax piece pretty well, including the 2026 sunset. I'll show you all that, but just know, we're not going to go into detail on methodology here. We'll do that separately. And the Roth conversion report can handle a one-year Roth conversion. So if you're trying to model a multi-year strategy or trying to fill up 5 years of Roth conversions, that's not supported right now, but the underlying guts allow us to do that eventually, probably without too much extra work. But just know for now, one-year Roth conversion, that's what we're showing. All right, let's get into it. So I've already teed up a scenario, and so this is the range calc screen. Let's say that we're going to do to fill up the 12% bracket without kicking in a lot of new capital gains. Let's say we're doing a $95,000 Roth conversion. All right, so I'm going to flip back to scenario analysis. I'm going to enter a Roth conversion. Now, to get the report to show up, you got to enter it in the taxpayer 1 and 2 fields. You can't do it in this kind of global field. So let's do it. What did I say? 95,000? 95,000. We'll have taxpayer 1 do the whole thing. If we're missing a taxpayer 2, it won't show up. So just make sure that your data entry is all clean within scenario analysis. Once you enter that, you'll see this little button pop up. New Roth explainer. So let's pop that open. Now, it's not enough to just say this is what's going on with modeling the tax consequence, because now when we're trying to build out a projection of what's happening in the future, we have to see where the Roth conversion fits within the context of what's in the portfolio, what does this person spend, what's their ages for RMD purposes, what assumptions do we have about what's happening with Social Security. So we got to enter all that stuff. We tried to keep it as basic as possible. We could have gone a lot deeper with this, but we kind of had to walk that edge between enough information to be directionally accurate to show like this is the Roth conversion in general is going to be worth doing or not, but also not turning it into a whole other projection software with 8,000 data entry fields, all right? So this is what we boiled it down to. So first of all, the Roth conversion we set up in the scenario analysis screen. We did $95,000 Roth conversion. It calculated a tentative cost of $8,115. That's going to come out of the taxable account. What are the accounts? All right, so let's put $1 million in all the combined taxable assets. We have to say what we're going to assume is the cost basis on that account. And again, I'm not going to go into methodology of why that's important right now, but just know that that's part of it. Let's say that this client, that's the one we did the Roth conversion on. Let's say they have a $200,000 IRA balance. Let's say she has a $300,000 IRA balance and they have $100,000 in Roth combined. Moving on, it's going to ask me for rate of return assumption. How much of that return is comprised of capital gains versus interest and dividends? And so these are default values, but you can change them. We're going to say 1/5 of the overall return comes from capital gains growth, the rest of it from income and dividends. That impacts some of the tax stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Default life expectancy 100. It's going to default the Social Security start year to the year that the person turns 70. Obviously, you don't have to necessarily do that, but in this case, let's say at age 70, $30,000 for him. At age 70, $30,000 for her will do. Moving along. Spending. Let's do a spending assumption of, I've got a, let's see, $90,000 a year. And inflation, those are the days, 2%. Let's go with 4% inflation. We're going to change some of this stuff, but, and then remember this screen here. This is the piece where we're trying to come up with some sort of assumption as to if we were to take an IRA and try to demonstrate to the client that a portion of that is a tax liability, what assumption are we going to use to describe that tax liability? I'll get to that in a second. We're going to default 24% here. 2026 rate sunset is true, complete. All right, so let me just have that crank away and run in the background. Let me show you this first section of the Roth report, which you don't have to use. We can turn these things on and off. This first section is like literally the exact, except for the holistic plan green, like the exact thing I used to explain what Roth conversions were back in 2011 when suddenly clients above a certain income were allowed to do them, and we were explaining what Roth conversions were. And so this is that kind of classic way of describing it as this client, we entered $300,000 and $200,000 for their IRAs, so they have a total $500,000 IRA balance. But of that, what the client may not realize is that of that $500,000 of total IRA balance, there is some liability built in, which is what will eventually have to be paid to the government. And what we're showing in this first panel here is as that account were to grow over 34 years, which is the remaining life expectancy, and 8% is the assumption we put in for returns. If that account were to grow, that's great. The $500,000 would turn into $6.8 million. Again, ignoring RMDs, we're just trying to show basic concepts here. But the problem is the government's piece would grow as well. And so what we're demonstrating is that if we can pop that little piece off today, I always used to describe this as like you've got this business partner who's just hanging out. They're not doing anything for the account itself, but they get the benefits of it. And this is you buying out the business partner in essence today rather than later. And so if we're able to pop off that IRA, or sorry, that tax liability from the IRA, then all that growth is ours. Of course, there's more to it than this. There's spending, there's RMDs, but this is to describe the concept of a Roth conversion if that's something that if that's a discussion that needs to be had with a client. If you don't need to have that, you can remove that section from the report entirely. And so I'll leave that gone for now. I thought I reloaded this. Let me click this to reload it. All right, it takes a little while for that to run. There's a lot of calculations happening in the background. So what we're showing here is this kind of classic base case versus doing the Roth conversion chart where they're both in one place, and this looks pretty good. This client here, they are earning more income from Social Security and from account returns than they are spending. And we'll change that in a second. So the Roth conversion still benefits them. That's the dark blue line. But you know, does it look all that compelling on this chart? Maybe not. That's why we've added this chart, which is just showing the difference between those two lines. And what it shows is, well, at the beginning, we had to pay for that Roth conversion. So the Roth minus base case is negative at the beginning because we had to pay money up front. But then over time, it pays itself back. And then eventually, you start to see this curve where the benefit of doing the Roth conversion grows over time. Let's add a little bit more spending so we can try to make them go broke. Just for fun, let's make them go broke. All right, so I'm gonna add, you can kind of shape these concepts at the bottom here. So if the spending is gonna be low and then high for a period after they retire and traveling, and then maybe lower again when they can't travel anymore, and then higher when they have to go into long-term care, you can do that. But let's just have their spending go to 120,000. Let's do 140,000. We want them to go broke. We want to see that happen. All right. Oops, did I put 2024? 2024, 140,000. Looks good. All right, let's rerun this. Okay, that ran successfully, and we successfully made them go broke before they reached their life expectancy. And what this chart shows us is the Roth conversion does give them, it looks like, another year before they completely run out of money. Let me show you the difference chart because that one's really interesting. And you'll see this quite a bit in this difference chart with the Roth conversions, is this little dip here. And what's happening here is with the Roth conversion, we're exhausting the taxable account first. Again, I'll go into methodology stuff in a separate video, but our order of operations for when we hit accounts is you're going to hit the taxable account first. And in theory, because we've paid for the Roth initially out of taxable, and because we've reduced our RMDs, our taxable account is smaller all the way throughout. And so that one gets bled dry first. And so actually, you start with the Roth case, in these projections, you're hitting the IRAs harder earlier. And so you have this tax burden early that starts to drain those IRAs faster. But then, once you reach the point where both projections have rated the IRAs, the Roth version then starts to really accelerate and be much better than the non-Roth case. And that's what you see here. I will show this though, because remember we entered that one adjustment that said, well, let's adjust the IRAs for their actual after-tax value. Because right now we're just looking at total value. And of course, a $100,000 IRA is going to look better than a $90,000 Roth if we don't take taxes into account. But if we do take taxes into account, it's going to change. And so I'm going to do that. So now I've adjusted my IRAs so that we've reduced their value, like their contribution to total account value, by the tax assumption for the IRAs. And what you'll see here is the Roth conversion looks better the whole way through, even at the very, very beginning. I mean, they hit equality once you go broke, but in this case, the Roth conversion always looks better. And that concept of popping off or adjusting account values for taxes is hopefully something your client understands, because we've already gone through this concept with them, right? We've showed them that, yes, you thought you had a $500,000 portfolio, but after tax, it's actually worth something around $380,000 based on this tax assumption. That's actually what's happening with that switch that we flipped when we adjusted these graphs at the bottom. There you go. That is the Roth one-pager, the Roth explainer. The name is to be determined. But it should be helpful for you as you close out the end of the year and you're trying to just really quickly show a client, like, here's why we're considering doing this Roth conversion. It's not going to take the place of a bigger, more powerful projection engine. There's whole dedicated software for doing that sort of stuff. But there you've got a lot more data entry and stuff like that. So hopefully this bridges the gap where if we're just really trying to explain a concept quickly, show the directionally accurate version of here's why we're doing this Roth conversion, I think this will fill that need. And down the road, hopefully, I don't think it should be too hard to implement. We'll be able to kind of do these multi-year scenarios where you can show, okay, 5 years between retirement and taking Social Security and RMDs, those late 60s, which is the classic Roth conversion time. We'll be able to model that and show that. I'm hoping maybe Q1 of 2023. But in the meantime, I think this will help at the end of the year. So again, it's available to everybody now. Just enter a value in that Roth field in scenario analysis, and that little purple button will show up. And starting in January, it will be a premium only feature, but right now it's for everybody. So have at it. We'd love to hear what you think about it. And again, stay tuned for the ultra long methodology discussion about how all the calculations work behind the scenes. Hopefully nothing in there will be too surprising, but there are some assumptions in there that if you're really into this stuff, we'll be able to talk about and explore. Thank you.